This is Dave with Taboo Customs. This video today we're going to be installing some new 7-inch LED headlights in our 98 TJ. Alright, so the lights that we're going to be using are GXENOGO. I guess that would be how you pronounce that. I'm not real sure, but anyway, these are the headlights that we've got. Of course, comes with some instructions. Now, these headlights that we got list that they will fit everything from a CJ to JK, which might be interesting. I mean, already looking at this, I can tell that the tools needed is incorrect. I know I'm going to need a T15 to remove the bezels around the headlights. So yeah, so we'll see how this goes. And I can see that, you know, the installation instructions are pretty much for a JK, which is probably, you know, 80% of the people buying these are probably JK people. So anyway, looks like we might have to just toss these instructions. We'll see how much of it works or not. Obviously, we're not going to remove the grill, but let's see how it goes. Let's take a look at the lights themselves. I mean, they look pretty decent. I mean, good ends. I mean, it's always a good indicator of quality is electrical type things, because cheap ends, cheap connectors, cheap splices, things like that. An adapter that's probably not for the TJ. I'm guessing that the 3-prong flat there is for the TJ. Got some extra wiring. I think this is for the halo that's actually around the headlights. I don't think there's much else in the box here. I can't even get this one out. Yeah, a couple of adapters. Pretty much it. So pretty simple. From what I understand, the installation should be pretty easy. But let's go through it and see how it goes. Okay, so first thing, obviously we're going to need to remove these trim pieces around the headlights. Now that's pretty simple. There's 3 screws around there. They're T15 torque screws, unless you've got a Jeep like this that someone has done some funky work to, and a couple of them are Phillips because they lost some screws at some point probably. Anyway, pull those out. We'll pull these out. One issue that you might run into that I just noticed on this one is that this screw is pretty much right with the headlight, so you got to try to push the headlight back and pull that screw out. One thing you can do is you can use your same T15, go in here and actually adjust the headlight back. You're going to have to adjust the headlights once you get these headlights installed anyway, so it won't hurt anything to go and do that. So let's get those rings out. So before we go too much farther, I kind of forgot I wanted to do this before we just jumped into it. Let's take a quick look at what these headlights look like before we change them out to LED. So we're going to shut all the lights off in the shop, shine the headlights on the wall. We're going to use the exact same distance that you would use to to adjust your headlight aim. So it's going to be 25 feet away from the wall, and we'll show it here, and we'll see how it looks, and then we'll come back later and we'll take a look with the LED headlights. High beam, low beam. All right, now that you've seen what the original headlights look like, let's continue taking those headlights out. These the headlights are actually held into some plastic, I don't know, headlight buckets, whatever you want to call it, by a little ring that's on the outside of the headlight here. And there's 3 on the TJ. There's 3 screws that are T15 screws. Luckily, they had the foresight to make them all the same size. And you remove these 3 screws, and the headlight should be able to come loose. We'll just have to unplug it from the back. Be careful not to drop the screws down inside of the grill. So once we get the little metal retaining ring off. Go ahead and pull the headlight out a little bit, reach behind it, and there's a 3-prong connector in there that will just pull out. So one of the things I actually knew about this Jeep beforehand, because we tried to adjust the headlight aim on these lights before, is that this adjuster here is actually broke. So when you're going in and doing this, one of the things you're going to want to check is this little ring that's closest to that the headlight actually screws into and holds the headlight. That's the adjustment ring. Check and see if either one of the adjustment screws, the plastic around it, is broke, because if it is, your headlights aren't going to be able to get adjusted right. This one does have a broken bucket, which we've got one on order. We'll go ahead and continue though with this installation, because honestly this doesn't take very long, and we'll pull it back out and replace that when it gets in. So another thing to watch out for is on these rings here. These rings have these little tabs. They're supposed to be 4 actual screws in there, not 3. I was incorrect earlier. These tabs, like with this one here, those small spot welds have a tendency to break off. This one had one of those break off, and the tab just fell down inside the grill. So watch for that. You may need to replace some of those rings as well. Unfortunately, that's the joys of working on old Jeeps. With the old headlights out, now we can start looking at the wiring for the new headlights. For the TJ, it looks like, we can just hook up our 3-prong connector directly to this and run with it, actually, if we wanted to. The only item that this has that we have to add is going to be the fancy little halo thing around the outside that everybody likes. It has a separate wire. So what we've got to do is we've got to decide, when do we want this halo on? Do we want this halo on all the time when the Jeep's running, or only, when the low beams are on, or when? I don't really want it on all the time while the Jeep's going, so I'm just going to probably tie this in to the low beam wire, and they send another wire and some connectors with some covers on them to keep you from contacting anything. Anyway, but that will be something that you'll have to figure out. You'll have to decide, where do you want to tie this into. But let's take a look at where I'm going to tie mine into. Let's look at the wire that I'm going to use to power the halo. Now, this is the connector for the light, and if we're looking at the back of this connector, the 2 plugs are vertical, essentially, on the light, and then the 1 plug that's horizontal. The horizontal plug is actually the low beam light, so that's what we're going to tie into. Now, one thing I noticed, a couple things on this as I get into this. Someone has cut into this before, because there's a small, I don't know what we call them, Scotch locks, but there's a little thing down here where you can tie into a wire by crimping it over it. Those are terrible to use. We would not want to use those. They have several issues. We're going to take that off, use the same spot, tie into the wire there. However, the bigger issue that we noticed, and I'm probably going to have to grab the camera and zoom in, but the wires on this connector are nearly gone. I'm not sure if it's due to heat. I can see some corrosion inside the connector, but they are in really bad shape. So as I mentioned, you can see on these wires just how bad the wires on the back of that connector are for the headlights. So add to the list of the things that we're going to have to fix on this Jeep. We'll end up ordering some of those. We'll go ahead and continue on with this install, though, just to show you the difference in the lighting. But in the end, we're going to end up pulling these all back out and replacing a bunch of things. All right, so we've gone in and went ahead and tied in the halo wire to our low beams here. And when we did that, we like to use a heat shrink wire connector that has solder in it. So as you heat it up, that solder will actually make the wire connection, and then you'll get a heat shrink effect too with the butt connector. We've been using those for a while. Oftentimes we'll go ahead and we'll cover them with some additional heat shrink. And then with this, we would actually go and loom it, but because we're going to go and replace this connector for this video, I'm not going to put loom back on here right now because we're just going to end up pulling it off a little bit later. So let's take a look at installing the lights. Okay, so to get started installing the lights, we noticed the back of them actually have an L and an R, left and right, driver's side, passenger side. One thing we did notice messing around with the halo wiring is that when we connected these two connectors, you know, some of those type of spade connectors will actually lock in. This is a type that locks in, so when you go to undo it, you actually have to stick something in there to get it to unlock. Good, actually, that you know it's going to stay together when you put it together. So let's go ahead and we will first connect our wiring. And then with these lights, there's a little, I don't know what this is, but a circle on top. The light needs to go in so that, you know, with this driver's side light here, that this is horizontal, and on this side, there's little indentations here that has to fit into the bucket. So make sure it does fit into there and it doesn't move. So with that in place, then you can start to put your ring back on your light. So with the retaining rings for the lights now in place, the lights now hooked up, what I would actually recommend at this point is that you do go and adjust the ambient headlights. Now we did a video on that a little while back, so if you're looking for a video on how to do that, if you can go back and take a look at that video, we run through how to adjust the ambient of your headlights. I do that before you put in these outer ring because sometimes it's hard to get to these adjustment screws with the outer ring in there. Once you get them adjusted, then we can go ahead and put this outer ring in, and we'll take a look at how they're performing. All right, so here they are installed, and obviously compared to the old headlights, they look a hell of a lot better. But let's see how they perform. Well, there you have the install of the GXENOGO 7-inch LED headlights. Overall, the headlights themselves, pretty easy to install. Even with a little bit of wiring, that's probably the trickiest part. But honestly, if you don't want to worry about the halo part, you probably don't have to. And you could leave that, and it's really probably a 15-20 minute install. 30 minutes is what they list. Is probably not too bad. Now, obviously, with this video and with your install, you might run into a few things that like we ran into here. So you got to keep that in mind, you know, and don't think about that as a downside. Think of it as you're actually going to find some things perhaps that, you know, you can fix before they do become issues. So in the future here, you'll see some more videos as we work through this bucket of bolts back here and continue to fix all of the little things that come up. You'll see videos on that, so stay tuned. Now, thanks for watching. If you do have any questions or comments, you can get a hold of us here at YouTube, or you can find us on our website, taboocustoms.com. We also have rust repair kits and armor and other items we sell there for Jeeps that we build. And then you can also find us on Facebook or Instagram. So thanks for watching. As always, a like or subscribe is appreciated.